Okay, so for those of you who might not recognize me without a hat, I'm Reed Hayden. My committee is Susan Smith, Hugh Curran, and Giles Timms.
The split gave you away.
Okay, so I am going to take a little bit of a different approach. I'm going to just start with my actual proposal for my thesis work. So I want to do 3 relatively large-scale wood carvings. I'm going to describe a little bit about how I arrive at this here, and then I'll kind of run you back through the history of how I got here with the following slides. So obviously I have my research, body research that I do, and it's based on mostly cognitive evolution and Zen practice are my interests. So I use those areas of research and I take the information I gather from them and I build systems, visual systems, to create the designs for the work. And then once I create the designs, then I usually produce them. As you'll see as we go forward, I've done a silkscreen print and I've done a carving and different things like that. So I take the design that's digital and then I sort of manifest it in the world, I guess, through a more conventional method and stuff that's kind of personal to me. And the one other comment I want to make about this before I move on to kind of show you the process is that the pieces, when they're finished, although the research and the areas that I'm interested in are important to me and they drive what I do, when I present the work, I'm not actually looking to communicate those things directly to you. The work, it becomes contemplative. The work is something for the viewer to experience and to navigate and to react to in their own time and way. Okay, so that kind of covers that. So this is literally the pieces that I'm proposing to do for the thesis. So this is a work that I've liked for a long time. It's by Joseph Kosuth. It's called 1 in 3 Chairs. Kosuth is dealing with, he has a lot of issues, things that he's interested in, things he's dealing with, as far as like tautologies and the art commodification and obviously conceptual art. But for me, when I saw the piece, what really piqued my interest was the idea that these 3 separate things all carry sort of a similar weight, a similar meaning. And with my interest in Zen, I'm very interested in how people perceive and navigate the world. And like language, and as like human cognitive evolution developed and language developed, language and logic are systems that we use to navigate the world and break it up and understand it. And so these things to me are examples of those sort of systems. Like obviously language is there with a definition, you have the actual object, you have a photograph which is a representation. So it really kind of got me thinking about like art in relation to my Zen practice and how we navigate the world and perceive the world based on who we believe we are. So I just want to mention that as sort of a starting point for me. So one of the things I wanted to understand was how systems and logic and perception start with the personal and start with like personal experience and our personal understanding of the world. And so this is a table of offsets. And so for me, for those of you who don't know, I spent 20 years as a boat builder, and for me, when I look at this, I immediately see a boat, and there's a lot of people out there in the world that can look at that and see a boat, and there's a lot more people that look at it and just see a random chart full of numbers. So it was interesting to me, again, as a starting point for myself, sort of in this search, I wanted to say like, well, let me look at this sort of system here and say like, what is embedded in it that everyone doesn't see? Or that is unique to a certain individual, and then start to understand that that sort of thing exists throughout all of our life experience, right? In other words, like everything we come in contact with has information embedded in it that we don't identify immediately because of our own personal experience and things like that, but the information's there. So if we can start to move in a direction that's more open to the, I don't want to be real corny, but sort of like the unseen, right? Like the information that's buried, that's around us all the time that we're just not awake to because we're kind of on our own agenda based on, navigating the world as it affects us personally, as we believe we're separate individuals in the world. Okay, so this is a piece that I made early on in the program, and it really just kind of reflects some of those things I was just talking about. So these are 6 panels, and what I was interested in doing was, I was interested in the idea of sort of the individual and the universal. And one of the things I started to think about was like, I think of the number 1 as like, hey, I'm number 1, the individual. And I think of the circle as it's a very Zen sort of reference as far as like the empty circle. It's empty, therefore it's full of everything. So it's kind of like the universal. And what I wanted to see was, how could I move from one to the other using sort of existing logic systems? And so what I did is, and also stuff that's personal to me, obviously, because I'm the guy making it. And so what I did here, I'll just kind of walk you through this. You have the circle on the bottom right, and then if you go up, there's the circle, and it has offsets that are embedded into the drawing. And then if you go from there to the next slide over where it says unity, then those offsets that are embedded in that drawing become a table of offsets like the previous slide. And then those table of offsets are arranged into an equation. The equation is reduced to a fraction, and the fraction is reduced to the number. So it's not perfect. It certainly doesn't express the ideas perfectly or anything, but it was kind of like my first attempt at trying to use these other systems and different things. And this is all sort of, at the time, like really out of my wheelhouse, right? Like really away from me sort of being an object maker and making things out of wood and stuff. But the point for me is that similar to 1 in 3 chairs, the concept of sort of this universal thing exists in each one of these panels separately. And I was hoping to kind of express the idea that as the concept runs, I'm running out of time, as the concept runs through them all, that I start to illustrate that. Okay, I better move on. Okay, so this is a piece that I did, and it's a passage from D.T. Suzuki's Intro to Zen Buddhism. And what I was interested in doing here was experiencing and reinterpreting something using existing systems, not a system that I built, but a system that exists in the world, an algorithmic system that exists in the world. Take that, lay it over something that I already sort of have an understanding and relationship with, and then re-examine it with those tools, and then try to see what comes of that and what arrives at that. And unfortunately, this isn't a great slide, so you can't read it. But what I did is I took the passage, I overlaid these algorithmic, it's called a Voronoi diagram, and I laid them over and made cells, and the cells, you can see here, ended up breaking the text up, and then I took the text in each cell and arranged it in these poems. And unfortunately, we can't see it, but the poems are kind of illogical in some ways, but when you read them, they really sort of make sense, and they sort of bring forward some ideas that seem kind of poignant to me. Okay, so another thing I want to do is look into the world and see, like, who else is doing this, who else is doing similar things, and how are they approaching it, and what are they gaining from it. And so I became interested in Arabic tessellation. And so I did a show last year where I did a series of pieces that were basically, really they were just recreations of Arabic tessellation through my own kind of filter a little bit. And they were painted and very craft-based. But this one I wanted to show you because it kind of shows the fact that there's a design that people are encountering in the world, but there's also this underlying geometry that generates the design. So I wanted to present those together for people to see that. And one of the things that interests me about this is that the artists and craftsmen that were doing Arabic tessellation, they were doing similar things to what I feel I'm doing as far as sort of looking into the world, looking into the systems that exist, and try to bring forth some sort of unseen connection that kind of holds everything together, and also use it to make something that people can engage with and have an experience with, specifically like these designs in a mosque, are very moving for people to experience personally. Okay, so now we're getting sort of to my work. And so this is one of the first sort of, how can I say it, like fully kind of fleshed out pieces based on what I'm doing. So Excuse me for a minute. So what I've done here is I better keep this brief. I've basically formed a system, and I take images and I run them through a system to generate these abstractions, and then I compose the abstractions in a frame to create the piece. Without going through the whole thing, what I really want to say here is that every part of this system is derived from my research. So I can point to this, like if you really want to hear it, I can point to everything and I can say, well, this represents this sort of thing that cognitively happens to the human being as they navigate the world and all that stuff. But the key, one of the things I've come to realize is that this stuff, this sort of system is important to me and drives me and is what I'm about and informs me and helps me experience the world and myself and everything else. But ultimately, it's not what I'm trying to do with the art. It's not what I'm trying to, excuse me, I am trying to communicate all those ideas with the art, but not literally. I'm not trying to lay it out there. So the next piece, so this is the finished piece. So this is the finished piece from the previous, this slide I just showed you. And this is a silk screen. And so this piece, again, getting to this point that this is contemplative. So when the viewer comes to this piece, the viewer kind of has their own experience with the piece. It can be a contemplative experience. It can be a narrative experience. It can be whatever you bring to it. My hope is that one of the things I'm trying to do is I'm trying to produce something that kind of doesn't give you a conceptual toehold so that you have the opportunity to experience it directly and not be led in any certain direction. You have it kind of unfolds for you as you come to it. This is pretty brief. This is my latest piece. This is a carved piece. It's sort of produced using the same techniques, but what I just wanted to show you is this is essentially the technique I'm going to use to make the thesis work. So this is carved pine panel painted. Okay, and then really lastly, this is a piece that I just did in Bangor called Arcs. And so the only thing I want to say about this is that most of my work's very introspective, kind of coming from the idea that in order to sort of understand the universal, you have to kind of go into the self, because you are the window into that, if you buy that. And so that's the path, is to go in that way, research, find that stuff, and then bring out those things. And here, this is the first time I've taken the opportunity to have participatory involvement with my work. And what I did here was I built a system, and then I encouraged people to act within the system, but I encouraged them to act within the system in any way they chose to. So I kind of built a system, explained the system to them, and I let them come to it and do what they will with it. And what was interesting about that was that it became another layer of research for me and provided more data for me, because I was able to kind of be there while they did this thing and try to get an understanding of how they perceive and navigate the world. And I've went way over my time. Thank you.